have taken a break from making videos about killing CIA and U.S. government, or Yankee bashing. I'm trying to do something constructive with my time and with my life. Anyhow, I want to talk about a couple of topics that are kind of very fringe. Some philosophers they talk about this stuff, but you don't see it very much. The Sufi master said that all the knowledge, all the occult knowledge or knowledge about physics or medical knowledge, whatever you can think of, it's not going to be discovered or somebody wouldn't invent it because it has already been invented, but it might not have been through humans, through our civilization. But that doesn't mean that that knowledge doesn't exist. And if you tune in into this etheric world full of dead scientists, dead physicians, then you can somehow get this communication come in, and it shows that what that knowledge would be, or what that mathematics would be, or should be. Well, I want to talk about a couple of examples. This is very interesting. I was listening to discussion about Ramanujan. He was an Indian mathematician, and he was claiming that his formulas, endless fractions, that's what he usually wrote about, or endless series, it came to him in a dream by a certain Hindu god, written in blood. The whole formula would just unveil itself. And then I was also studying Edgar Cayce's, his psychic, and if you look at his medical recommendations for people who are sick, it looks like these techniques or these knowledge came to him, or was a knowledge that was possessed by a dead physician. It was communicated to him. He was merely a conduit or a medium, and you can kind of look at the quality or the methods. They all worked, but they were something that you would not possess it at the time. It wasn't being used or wasn't being practiced in such a manner at that time. It was like when he was diagnosing a patient, that as if a ghost had gone through the body of this patient, and this ghost was able to figure out what was the problem and was communicating it to Casey, which is very interesting. Well, I had a video, was called God is a Mathematician Obsessed with 19, and I was talking about Quran, the religious text Muslims believe in, and it's constructed so intricately. It's as if a mathematician, a number theorist, had constructed it or proportioned it. Every word has some correlation to mathematically to every other word. The number of surahs or chapters is divisible by 19, and the number of letters is many surahs or most surahs is power of 19, or you can find all kinds of special numbers in Quran. Well, it's just like a consciousness that was a mathematician that was outside of the prophet, outside of him. It was inducing these messages, and these messages are very carefully constructed. So a lot of Muslims they have field day with this. They go over all the special number theorist relationships, and they talk about. I have a whole book on it, and it's pretty intricate. But there is other scientists or other clergy. They talk about all the stuff that has to do with molecules or weather or history of Earth. They all show up in different fractions. One of the best ones is in one of the surahs. It talks about the land mass and waters, and when you divide the number of times of the letters, or the number of times the word land showed up as, and divided by bahr, which means seas, you get a fraction, and this fraction is close to the land mass fraction versus the sea fraction, or land mass divided by the sea is the same fraction. It shows up, which is like somebody, a ghost or a consciousness, induced this surah, this chapter, and when you decipher it, you see that the fraction corresponds to what is on the planet Earth, which is really is very strange coincidence. This consciousness might have known the whole Earth and the fractions, which is not an easy thing to do. You need have a satellite, and you actually need to do a lot of calculations to figure that out. So I mean, I'm just trying to get a point across that consciousness, or certain consciousness, a ghost of a scientist or a mathematician, or a universal consciousness of God, could possess mathematics, could possess memories of the evolution of the universe, or might possess knowledge about the earth which precedes any kind of civilization, and it would only be something that new earth from the beginning, something like that. Well, then this brings out another discussion that mathematics can survive in the consciousness after death. So the consciousness can exist and possess mathematical knowledge, or medical knowledge, like the ghost that was inducing all this knowledge to Casey, and it just exists out there in the ether world, independent of the physical world. You don't really need written records. But, but then again, not everybody is a medium, or they're not conscious of it. Well, we keep records, electronic or written, or even on the stone. We are limited, and they are nice thing to have. To have records to refer to it later on. But some other civilization might not have thought that way. Well, A lot of knowledge that's passed on in tribes, in older civilizations, wasn't passed on by written record. It was a narrative, like a father would narrate to the son. And in some languages, especially Farsi or Arabic, everything has a connotation. Like in Farsi, some words are seldom used, but when they're used, they always mean very specific thing, not what the dictionary would say about the word, but the connotation was actually the meaning. Well, actually, I think that this is how psychics they access information. They kind of tune in into this universal consciousness or consciousness of a ghost, and they tease out this knowledge about something that they want to know. Well, some psychics they call this the Akashic records, but my terminology is more sophisticated. I could think in a different way. Well, I know how to do remote viewing, which not only in physical terms, like looking at a distant location, but also in terms of time. I could look at a place and a time, might be in the past or in the future. This is a gift that few people have, few psychics have. But then this also brings out another topic, is that uh, some quantum physicists they say that we are nothing but consciousness. Well, actually, I said that, but uh, then this consciousness is nothing but a segmented consciousness of the universe. Well, universe, if you imagine universe to be ocean, then this segmented consciousness is only like a drop of water of this ocean. But what happens is that in many animals, if an animal loses her feet or part of the body, then we just simply grow up, grow another one. Well, all the information to make another hand or another leg, uh, it was already inherent or written down in the genes or of the rest of the body of this animal. Well, many animals are like that. We are not. The humans are not. But uh, recently, scientists are able to use stem cells and coax the stem cell to grow another hand or another eye, something like that. But this brings us back to a theological discussion that existed in early Islam, and also Christians. They also they struggle with this. They take the wrong side. Well, in the Islamic period, they would say that each consciousness, well, actually, the Sufi master said that each person is a complete copy of the universe. Each consciousness is a complete manifestation of the universe. There is no shortcoming. There is no nothing that is missing. Everything is there. Okay, but well, the task of getting the rest of this information that is not available to me right this minute is kind of a mighty task. Not everybody is a medium, Not everybody is a very perceptive psychic, but it can be done. And the early emphasis was that if you tune in, if you learn through regular prayer or meditation to tune in to God, to the rest of the universe, then, then this information or any information or anything that the universe knows or has experienced will come to you too. In fact, you will become God. You will become the rest of the universe. This uh, this idea is kind of in a way repeated in Christianity, that the Christians say Jesus was God, but then uh, Prophet Muhammad, he didn't want to say anything of the sort because it would be offensive, and then it brings on other discussions that many people, they really don't worship God. They worship money. They worship blondes. They worship nice farmland, something like that. And when a person makes such a claim, then he's confronted with fighting. But this saying has a meaning in that this person has managed to connect to the universe and experience what the universe experiences, and then he should be smart enough to not repeat everything that he hears. Okay. Uh, okay. So, but then these ideas gave rise to certain kinds of extremism in Christianity and also in Islam. Is that in Islam, uh, well, it also exists in Sufism too, that the Sufi master said that if we really be able to tune in and receive all the knowledge, then what need do we have of written text and regular college, or if the knowledge or the innate knowledge is something that can be teased out, but then what we need with the text. But then this gave rise in early Islam to fanaticism, and many early Muslims or Arabs, they burn many books. They only keep Quran, and this is extremism. And then also they went to different countries. For example, they burned the Alexandrian library. But then the Christians too, in medieval ages, they shunned reading or intellectual pursuits or reading books. And I saw a movie about this. They kind of lock up the library and you're stuck with the Bible only. Well, this is also another form of the same kind of extremism, but it, in both instances, once you realize that you are a complete being and you really don't need these other gods, these other entities, then, but this is a far cry, a far, you are forcing yourself or cutting yourself out of knowledge that it's something that exists within your culture, and you shouldn't be totally without it. Well, I can't imagine being without internet or being without my books or library. But we are so used to these things that we have lost our ability to receive knowledge, receive blessings, receive love from the universe, and experience it, because we are addicted to other forms of knowledge. Well, actually, the reading from the text, what actually is happening is an inferior form of learning than even oral narratives. Because when you're reading a text, all the intonations, all the meaning that was implied by the orator, by the scientist, by the original author, is kind of lost. You know, if an author read a part of his book, from the tones, from emphasis, you understand that text differently than when you read it. It has been truncated when it's in the text form, and what you're doing is taking it back and putting it back here, and then interpreting it out of the written word, and then you're gonna say it out. It comes out even differently than what the author might have meant. But this is a different discussion. In fact, this is very limited form of knowledge because you're very tied to these words or how the connotation is in the language, and each person uses the words differently and means different things too. So it's more limited, but the knowledge that comes in, say for example a psychic experience I had, is a more complete knowledge, and you get all the aspects of this knowledge. It all comes in at the same time. Well, I had the experience. For example, I talked about it in another video. My mediumistic experiences. For example, I saw Jesus in a dream. Okay, so this vision or this knowledge came in, and it looks nothing like the knowledge that or the narrative that you read in the Bible. The same goes, for example, when I was experiencing or I had a dream about Cleopatra, and in this vision or in this dream, you cannot miss this feeling of being betrayed. It's just so strong. I mean, when you read the account in the historical books, it sounds completely different. But when you actually experience it, you see that she felt very betrayed. So that's a understatement right there. But so I mean, knowledge can be in different forms, and there are some forms that are much better. Where the original saying, the original idea from Islamic period or from Christianity, they're correct. They are, but you should not become a radical or a extremist and try to destroy the knowledge that people accumulate through book learning. Well, actually, what many people they do is by reading the books or by listening to narratives. What they do is they construct a theory or a narrative or a history of, for example, life of Jesus or of Quran. All this stuff is really a very limited knowledge. It's like a building that somebody who didn't know how that building looks like constructed it with whatever material that he or she could get her hands on. The building is really very shady. It has many flaws, and in reality, this building wouldn't even stand on its two legs in real world. But they have constructed it out of the stuff that they have heard. But well, for example, my knowledge of Cleopatra is real. Is a is a psychic experience. I experienced what Cleopatra felt or experienced. So this is a different kind of knowledge. Well, the Sufi master said that there is a joke in Iranian. They try to get this idea. Said that there was a Turk and there was a Persian and there was an Arab, and they were all they had a limited amount of money. They wanted to all buy grapes. Then the the Persians would say, "I want angur." Angur is the word for grapes. I forgot the word in Arabic for grapes, but the Arab would say that, and then the Turks would say his own, and then they started arguing with each other because they didn't they couldn't convey the real meaning of grapes. So somebody that knew all these languages came around and gave them some grapes, and they all shut up. Then this is the kind of the same concept. Until you get the real thing, unless you have that real experience, then you cannot go from this mental construct to the real thing. The real thing is different. It has a different quality. In fact, it has a much richer quality to it. Well, usually in the temple, in the Sufi temple, they when the Sufi master speaks, well, most people they don't have the high IQ that I have, and I only get about on the first viewing I only get about like 30% of it. I kind of was wondering, I'm very smart and I have studied Iranian literature. I went to college. I have a master's. How come I'm not getting this? I'm getting 30%. But then my knowledge improves after the second viewing. Becomes like 40, 50. I usually end up with something like 60, 70% of what he said. And then some of the stuff, it comes back to me many years later. Like I have studied something else, and suddenly these ideas come back on. It's because I'm also used to, like many people, to acquire knowledge from books or internet, and this kind of shady knowledge is kind of an approximate to what the real thing is. Well, at the same time, we cannot get rid of this stuff. I'm not like early Muslims. I'm not going to go burn Alexandria's library. I'm not like the Christians in the medieval time, lock up the library. So, I mean, everything has the right and is valuable in its own sense. Well, thank you for putting up with me. My very weird and strange videos. Oh, one last topic. In the early Islam, when Prophet Muhammad had brought Quran, many Arabs they were not used to like having only one God, the universe, and the universe is telling this Arab guy, hey, it's like this, and they say, how come you condense all the gods into this one God, Allah, and then he kind of had to explain that you really don't need other gods. Well, this argument can be extended. Like, for example, Ramanujan was saying that I received this mathematical knowledge from a certain Hindu god. Okay, but then this Hindu god, if he exists in this etheric world, he's really himself a segmented consciousness of the universe. So when you are accessing the Akashic records, or when you are communing with the universe, you are communing with all the other gods. Okay, it's like you're tapping into the mainframe, and well, the mainframe has all the simulations that it had created, and knows how every simulation is. Well, I used to, when Nintendo came out, I used to sell these early versions. They were like cartridges, and they all had a little game program that was hacked into the little chip that was on the cartridge. So I was doing pretty good, and sell a lot of them. But then after a while, the Super Nintendo came out, and then they had all kinds of other. The later versions were really on CD, but towards the end, when the 8-bit or the cartridges were dying out, I was I was praying, saying, "Oh God, this thing is dying, but how I wish that this whole business belonged to me. This whole 8-bit cartridge business belonged to me." And in fact, that's exactly what happened. Many people who liked the early Nintendo, they had also copied the little programs that were actually the game on the chip that was on this cartridge onto the hard drive of their computer. And then later on, there evolved these emulators that you could run the emulator and then fetch this stored 8-bit game, and then it would play the whole game. For example, I played Super Mario Brothers, but not on the 8-bit system, but on the emulator on my desktop. So this is the same kind of concept, is that the universe is the one that created all these other gods, and it can simulate or emulate everything that they do, or everything that they might know. And in fact, there is nothing but just one God. If you tap into this one, then the rest will follow. Well, probably I'm the only guy in this town that has an interest in these very strange topics. Thank you very much for being my YouTube channel, and please subscribe, and don't be shy to leave comment. Thank you.